standing. If you look on this right side of your program, we'll have a salute to the flag of Virginia. I salute the flag of Virginia with reverence and patriotic devotion from other states and statesmen, which represents the old dominion, the liberty and independence of the Confederate flag. I salute the Confederate flag with affection, reverence, and undying devotion to the cause for which it stands. Thank you. You may be seated. Again, I want to thank each of you for being with us this morning.
Sir, can I see that program just for a moment?
Confederate ancestors, we also honor all those who have served
Okay.
the descendants of those in the armed forces since that time. As we always say, the brave forget the brave.
Thank you.
Get your freshman if you want.
I believe we get a freshman too.
Cut my finger.
Stonewall SCV camp.
Just open up a can over there.
Oh shoot.
On this auspicious occasion, also on Memorial Day and the anniversary of our park, which we dedicated with the large flag behind me 2 years ago today. This facility is here because of the generous support from people like you. And this park was created as a concept of a place to display Confederate monuments and symbols. Today we honor all who have served, especially the descendants of Confederate veterans who have put on a uniform and many who laid down their lives over the century and a half since. May their deeds and sacrifices never be forgotten. This time I would like to ask Jan Lowry, who is currently president of the Rockbridge chapter, United Daughters of the Confederacy, and second district chairman for the UDC, to come forth and bring greetings.
Thank you, Brandon, for including us in this ceremony again today. It's been a pleasure to be able to take part in this celebration of and to remember all of those thousands of men who died in the, some call it the Civil War, some call it the War of Northern Aggression. Let's refer to it as the War of Southern Independence. So thank you for including us, Brandon, and greetings to all of you.
You know, I don't think Susan's with us today, but we always like to honor the flaggers if they're participating, because they sponsor these large flags that are behind us. They do that all around the Commonwealth, and we appreciate them as always. You know, Memorial Day really got its start during the latter part, towards the end of the War of Southern Independence. Various cities claimed the rights to be considered the first place where Memorial Day was celebrated. But I think we can say the sentiment was the same wherever it was, and later Northerners took note of the practice. The ladies would go out and place flowers on the graves in the springtime of the deceased. Some of those celebrations happen in April, obviously, when flowers are coming out. But eventually, we had the national holiday instituted, which falls in late May. At this time, I'm going to ask our Piper Commander, Luke McDonald of the Gordonsville Grays. He's going to play the song Shenandoah for us. Now we have our guest speaker for the memorial service, retired Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan White, who's also a PhD and man of many talents, served in the military, been involved in education, teaching in the colleges around the state for a while now. He's a member of our local Sons of Confederate Veterans camp, and as always, he will do the men that served proudly with his talk today, I'm sure. I'd like to welcome you to the podium, sir.
All right.
The wind is not cooperating, so.
I'd like to start off by a personal farewell to one of our recently departed camp members, Troy Hagwood. At the day of Troy's funeral, I went home and I thought about it a bit, and there's a couple of quotes from General Lee that I thought were appropriate that I'd like to share with you. Once Stonewall Jackson died, he wrote, "I know not how to replace him. God's will be done. I trust he will raise up someone in his place." And to General Hood, Lee wrote, we must all do more than formerly. We must endeavor to follow unselfish, devoted course that he pursued." George Patton, whose grandfather was a Confederate colonel, said at a memorial service, and I'm going to clean it up because George Patton had a potty mouth. He said, "We must not mourn that such men died. Instead, we should be grateful that such men lived." That's my thoughts about Troy. I miss him. He's a good man, and he's leaving awful big shoes to fill. Okay, so ladies of the UDC, the OCR, and brothers of the SCV, thank you for the opportunity to talk. I want to talk a little bit about why the Confederate soldier fought. First and foremost, he fought because his state asked him to. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. In April of 1861, Governor John Letcher of this county issued a proclamation, quote, ordering all armed regiments or volunteer regiments and companies within this state forthwith to hold themselves in readiness for immediate orders, and upon receipt of this proclamation to report to the adjutant general. So this was just after President Lincoln called for troops to invade the southern states unconstitutionally, and Virginia said, no, we're not going to do that. And then he said, okay, call out the troops. And they did. Units that had formed in the aftermath of Harper's Ferry, or even before, usually would assemble at the courthouse. Thousands of other young men also flocked to the colors and formed new units. If you go to the Virginia Regimental History series, they'll tell you about each individual company of a regiment and when they were formed and where they were formed and what their name was of the company, etc. A lot of those were after Harper's Ferry in 1859, or when Governor Letcher called for troops to defend Virginia and the South. Later, in April of 1862, Confederate soldiers showed up because they were conscripted. Now, you can quibble about which one's more honorable, whether you enlist right off the bat or whether you wait till you're conscripted, but even conscripted soldiers served well and faithfully throughout the war. Whether they volunteered in 1861 or conscripted in 1862, many of them stayed to the very end in their fighting for Southern independence. The Confederate soldier served to protect his home and family. Turner Ashby, who was a minor figure up in Fauquier County before the war, he was well known to have said during the war, quote, "The war began not at Sumter, but at Harper's Ferry, and not by South Carolina, but by John Brown and the band of zealots who either by money or Sharp's rifles were hounding him on against the liberty of the South." Harper's Ferry just cast an enormous shadow across the South, where Northerners were trying to organize, support, inspire, and lead a slave insurrection that would kill women, children, men. They didn't care. If you look at what happened in Nat Turner, the deaths were indiscriminate. Southerners did not like that. The Confederate soldier fought to protect his family and his community and his neighbors. Randolph McKim, who was a private in the 1st Maryland, he was a student at the University of Virginia when the war broke out, but he ended up serving in the 1st Maryland because he was from Maryland. He wrote about the God-implanted instinct which impels man to defend his own hearthstones. And I think that applies to Confederate soldiers across the board. They were fighting for home. In fact, as officers were guiding men during Pickett's charge, urging the men to keep going, they were saying, home is on the other side of those hills. The Confederate soldier fought to prove his worth and courage. Now, young men do courageous and sometimes foolhardy things. If you spend any time on TikTok or YouTube, you'll see lots of young people doing, like, what were you thinking kind of things. Well, when the war broke out, young men decided that they wanted to show their courage by joining the Army. And they were mostly young men, very young men. They also do things to impress young women. I know that's hard to believe, but there were a lot of men that would join up, either because the women in their lives urged them to, or to impress the women that they wanted to impress. Phoebe Yates Pember, who was the famous nurse who saved so many Confederate lives and Union lives in Richmond hospitals during the war, she wrote, quote, "The women of the South had been openly and violently rebellious from the moment they thought their states' rights touched. They incited the men to struggle in support of their views, and whether right or wrong, sustained them nobly to the end." And if you read like diaries or first-person accounts by Union soldiers, whenever they tangled with a Southern woman, it was, whoa, Nelly. The ladies were letting them know they were not welcome. They would call them secession women, or secession ladies. Some Union soldiers, especially late in the war, fought for Marsh Robert E. Lee, what the common soldier would call him, Marsh Robert. Just prior to the surrender at Appomattox, General Henry Wise, who had been the governor of Virginia before the war and had become a brigadier general in the war, and commanded at the very end, one of the most disciplined units still in the Army. A political guy, but made a good officer, created a good unit. Just before Appomattox and the night prior to Appomattox, Wise suggested to Lee that he surrender the Army. Said the time's come. And Lee thought about it a minute and he replied, "What would the country think of me if I did what you suggest?" And Wise, again, he's not a West Pointer, he's not polished, and he had some harsh language as well. He is reported to have said, "Country be damned. There is no country. There has been no country, General, for over a year or more. You are the country to these men. They have fought for you, They have shivered through a long winter for you without pay or clothes or care of any sort. Their devotion to and faith in you have been the thing that held this army together. If you demand the sacrifice, there are still thousands of us who are willing to die for you. I think that says a lot about the devotion of the Confederate soldier for Robert E. Lee. He was a guy he was a leader who inspired faith and confidence in those around him. Lee repaid that faith to his men after he had surrendered to Grant at Appomattox. He got, I think, Colonel Taylor to draft, and Lee signed his farewell. And I'll quote that here at length because it's pretty, it's well written and touching. Lee wrote after the surrender to Grant, but before the army had broken up. He said, I need not tell the brave soldiers of so many hard battles who have remained steadfast to the last that I have consented to this result from no distrust of them, but feeling that valor and devotion could accomplish nothing that could compensate for the loss that must have attended the continuance of the contest, I determined to avoid the useless sacrifice of those whose past services have endeared them to their countrymen. You will take with you the satisfaction that proceeds from the consciousness of duty faithfully performed. And I earnestly pray that a merciful God will extend to you his blessing and protection. With an unceasing admiration for your constancy and devotion to your country, and a grateful remembrance of your kind and generous consideration of myself, I bid you all an affectionate farewell. So there was a lot of love going up and down that chain of command. Finally, there were constitutional arguments and arguments over the nature of self-government. And I don't want to engage in an obscure argument about that here, but a number of soldiers wrote about it after the war. While not every soldier in the ranks could be called a great constitutional scholar, there were a number of them in the Confederate Army, and their skill in making an argument does not depend upon rank. There were many high privates, quote unquote. If you've read Sam Watkins' book, the Tennessean, wrote a famous book called Company H, he calls himself a high private. I kind of like that title. There were many high privates that understood the Constitution better than the men on the other side. Captain John Anderson Richmond, he wrote a book after the war. It's I would highly recommend that book. It's known as Richardson's Defense of the South. It's available online on Google Books. It's also available in the Confederate shop in Harrisonburg, which I would highly recommend you if you want a hard copy. So let me quote one little bit from that by Richardson. And he said, the Constitution itself says the U.S. shall guarantee to every state in the Union a Republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and domestic violence. This is the language of a master to his servant. So it's the words where the states, the masters, are talking to their servant, the federal government. Mark the words, Richardson said, shall protect. They are compulsory. The servant has no choice but to obey. To refuse is rebellion. So Richardson is saying the federal government was in rebellion against the Constitution. Virginia wasn't in rebellion. Georgia wasn't in rebellion. The federal government was. If then, from the point of view of the federal government, these states were still in the Union, because remember Lincoln said all those seceded states have not seceded, they're still in the Union. But I'm going to invade them and wage war on them. So let me pick back up. If then, from the point of view of the federal government, these states are still in the Union, how could that government invade them without violating the Constitution? And that's a good question. Lincoln said South Carolina was in the Union. Lincoln then ordered the Army to invade South Carolina and wage war on South Carolina. That is a violation of the Constitution, and that's why Virginia left the Union. Randolph McKim was a student at the University of Virginia and became a private in the 1st Maryland, as I mentioned. He later became an Episcopal priest. He wrote in a book after the war, Lincoln issued his proclamation calling upon Virginia to furnish her quota of troops to coerce the seceded states back into the Union, and thereby instantly transformed the old Commonwealth from a Union state into a seceded state. It was the threat of invasion that revolutionized the position of the state of Virginia. The last veteran I'm going to talk about today is one of my favorites. There's a guy named James Bumgardner, who was a Confederate veteran from Augusta County. He spoke at Memorial Day service in 1879, and he was the adjutant for the Stonewall Brigade at one point, captured at 3rd Winchester, but he survived the war. So in 1879, he wrote, and this is a really useful quote, I think, useful for us today. A brave, noble, patriotic, devoted, and wise people perpetuate in bronze and marble the memory of its heroes, patriots, saints, martyrs, and sages. Hence, the traveler in a strange land examines the cemetery with as much interest as the living city, for he sees there, at one view, all of a country's past and all of its present. If he learn that the dead brave are forgotten, he knows that the living are brave no longer. If he sees that the patriotic, the virtuous, the saintly of the past are not honored, he knows that patriotism, virtue, and faith have sought another climate. But where the graves of heroes are kept green, and where the foot of the pilgrim still seeks the shrine of the martyr, he knows that courage, truth, faith, and honor still abide in the hearts of the living. The Confederate soldier needs no eulogy. His devotion and deeds will speak for themselves in history. He was tried by every test that measures the courage, endurance, faith, and devotion of man to the people present. And never found wanting, I'm sorry. If you've seen the film Saving Private Ryan, at the very end, Tom Hanks has been mortally wounded and he's dying, and he looks up at young Private Ryan and he says, "Earn this," which is that's a hard thing to hear for a young man looking at a dying man. Bumgardner wrote something similar. He wrote of the Confederate soldiers, "Their record is made up, and in it is written the verdict that they were worthy of the cause for which they died. Some pages are yet to be added to our record. Let us endeavor so to fill them as to secure for ourselves the verdict that we were worthy the offering of such lives." Thank you very much.
This time I would like to call our our first lieutenant commander, Andy Schindler, to the podium for a special presentation.
So everybody that is familiar or a member of the SCV, the UDC, or any organization like ours knows that we have a pretty extensive set of awards and recognition that we give to people from time to time, whether that's for actions or achievements or whatever it may be. About a year ago, I happened to be on the SCV national website, and I was looking through the awards manual, and I saw an award I thought was pretty cool that I'd never seen anybody receive, and it was called the War Service Medal. And what that medal is for is the descendant of a Confederate soldier who has also been in combat. And my immediate thought, the moment I read that, was, well, my brother Troy qualifies for that. And so I talked to him, and he gave me the paperwork necessary and sent it in to SCV National, and the Stonewall Brigade paid for the award, the medals, and everything that goes associated with that. And it was quite an honor for me as not only his friend, compatriot, and what I consider brother, but I'm also an Army veteran myself, and Troy and I had a little connection there with that. And so it was quite an honor for me to present that to Troy at our May camp meeting last year. So throughout the summer and last fall, Troy comes to me one day and he says, "Hey man, I got a buddy up there on the parkway I work with, his name's Barth. He qualifies for that medal too, and I'd like to give it to him." And I said, "Well, no problem. Here's the application. Give me the paperwork, and I'll send it in for you." Well, Troy personally wrote a check to pay for it. We sent all of that in, and it came in late February. And in March, we were scheduled to go to the Harrisonburg Colonel March Camp 10 meeting so that Troy could personally give that award to Barth. We all know what happened, and so that wasn't able to happen. And at this time, I'd like to ask Barth to come over here, and I'd like to present him this award for Troy.
Thank you. I also have a couple of awards that I wanted to hand out today as well. And we'll go to another gentleman here in the honor guard. I'm sure most of you have seen what happened in the last few years at VMI and what they did to not only Jackson's memory up at the post, but also what happened up at New Market Battlefield that VMI also owns. Every year New Market was celebrated because of the connection of the VMI Corps cadets that marched all the way from VMI up there in 3 days and were thrown into battle and repulsed the enemy. And those young men showed great bravery. And so VMI basically built I guess you would say, almost an honor system on them. And everything revolved around the courage of the VMI cadets at Newmarket. And of course, that horrible, rotten governor, I won't even mention his name, that installed his puppets at VMI, shut down all the celebration of those Newmarket cadets. And one of our members was very instrumental in making some ceremony at Newmarket happen again, and starting with last year at this time and continuing this year, we were able to have some living history and demonstrations there. Got the flag back on the battlefield, and cross your fingers for what happens politically with this state come November. But at least for now, some of that's been rolled back. This gentleman's a veteran himself, former SWAT officer, and he knew how to talk to the people up there. I think he's the only non-VMI individual ever invited to address the Board of Visitors there. And so through his work and helping push a petition drive that others participated in, we were able to get that. So I want to present a Heritage Defensive Award from the Virginia Division SCV to Dan Phelps.
I can't tell you how big of an honor this is. All the work that went into it with the mechanized cav, got over 5,000 petitions, and our governor's behind this. And hopefully we can hold this high ground. We're on high ground right now. I'm going to meet with the staff next fall. They're told they want to grow it. A really cool event that happened last year on the anniversary is Troy was there to take the very first picture of cadets retaking the field. It was huge. A lot of the alumni war veterans were there hugging them, and Troy got to see that. He was a part of that. But I want to thank everybody that ever signed those petitions. We're going to hold this high ground, and I am honored to have this. Thank you so much.
In April, we have a Confederate History Month program up here. I recognize this individual's family, but I'm going to do it again today because I placed him in for this award last year for his support and dedication to this park. He's a member of our camp, and his family support has been very instrumental in helping us to secure things here and make this park grow. And I want to recognize Dr. Stephen Walker and his wife Linda for their support. And here's your 2024 or 2025 Virginia Division Heritage Defense Award. And thank you. Thank both of you. If we had a few more members like these gentlemen, we take the whole country, I think. So I want to thank all of them for everything they do. At this time, we're going to have our wreath and bricklaying ceremony. I would like to ask members of Troy Hagwood's family if they would like to join me as we place a memorial brick in his honor. And if there are any other individuals here that purchased a brick in the last 4 months that hasn't placed your brick, we'll give you the opportunity to place that as well. If not, we'll place them after the ceremony on their behalf. And
Yeah, sure.
Can I talk?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be presenting that wreath right now. Where do I need to walk into the pole or to the podium? Do you know?
I'll tell you what, I don't really know about that one.
Yeah, okay.
I
I hope he does the other one first, then I can kind of finish it.
Well, either way, you can't wander.
That's right.
This wreath is being placed in the Stonewall in honor of all of our Confederate ancestors and all of those who served all their descendants. And this wreath is being placed on behalf of the Hanover Dragoons. At this time, the inside cover, you'll find the words to Amazing Grace. The bagpiper will play one verse of it, and then if you'll join me in singing all four verses of it, this is pretty standard procedure for us that we sing this at all of our memorial services. Being one of Jackson's favorites, we like to honor all of those with that.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. All right, y'all, finishing this up here in Lee Jackson Park. Glad to be able to share this special ceremony with you. Basically, the second anniversary of the dedication of Lee Jackson Park, right along I-81 and I-64. You can see off in the distance, Lexington, Virginia is just about 10 miles southward here, just down this interstate. So there's a wonderful ceremony today. Wonderful speakers. Got a lot of good food prepared over here. Nice, great family event. So once again, from Lee Jackson Park, it's made possible by the Stonewall Brigade SCV camp. I encourage you to help support, donate as much as you can to the organization and the good folks who make this possible.